It's Jeremy from jeremy.net. So I had something a little bit different planned for this video. However, I realized that it's the last weekend in January and I haven't done a January drawing purge. So now's the time. These are all the drawings I've done in figure drawing class since December. So there's a few that I have here that were not part of the one that I did in December. I was taking a class on heads, hands, and feet at the Animation Guild. And so there's a few heads that are left from that class, and then I'll have some from the class I'm currently taking. So, these are just starting with some basic structural drawings. I think out of these, this one might be the only one that I'll post on my blog. I don't think any of these are keepers, but I think that these are ones where showing that middle ground between doing the construction lines, the way you see them on the nose and the lips here, versus the actual soft tones and trying to treat volume and structure with tone, showing that this is a side that's facing away from the light, whereas this is a surface that's facing up. I think that that's interesting to look at. So I might include this one in the blog, and possibly the one up there too. But I'm not going to keep any of these to do paintings on top of or redraw. Something else, if this is your first time watching one of my videos, a lot of times I take my drawings that from figure drawing class that don't come out well. Like for instance, this one, the forehead is too large. You don't get a sense of volume even though the model was tilted backwards. The chin, I just put in a solid line here instead of getting the sense of the underside of the tone. One of the best ways to improve your drawing skills, period, is to take your drawings that don't come out well and to redraw them. Not redraw them copying the bad things, but trying to fix them. I'll take a drawing like this one, and I'll set a whole sheet of paper aside and draw 5, 6, 7 different versions of it, analyzing all the things I did wrong in it. Because breaking down what you did wrong and learning how to fix it, even though you may spend 20, 30 minutes doing all those little studies, when the time comes that you have to draw a similar pose the next time, you'll remember the things that you figured out from working on these drawings. And doing that will help improve the drawings that you do in the future when you are at a figure drawing, workshop or a class, or when you're doing your own drawings. You'll do similar poses, and that's part of that's one of the absolute best ways to improve your drawing, bar none. This page, I think I kind of like a little bit of the structural sense and the way I hit the tones on this one. The rest of these, like this drawing, I think is interesting in that it's structurally sound, but it's not a particularly attractive drawing. I didn't do a good job of capturing the softness of the model's features. I made everything harsh and blocky because I was working on structure. That's one of the downsides when you're still a bit ham-fisted and you're working at these things, is in trying to define structure, it looks like bricks instead of actually looking like a human face. So yeah, I'll probably post this one on the blog. I don't really know about this one. I'll probably photograph it and then decide on the fly. But the rest of these are just sort of like half-finished studies. Sometimes the model will take a pose, and I just spend I don't get there in time. I'm working on just getting the angle right and the direction, a little bit of lighting, and I just don't get into actually drawing the features in enough time. So. Let's see, this one is a large drawing. We had sometimes we'll do sessions where we do long poses with the model, and basically whenever I do my figure drawings by how much time I have. If it's a 5-minute pose, let me grab one of the previous ones. Something like this, these, it's about the size, a little bit smaller than my hand. This is like a 5-minute pose. Something that's like an 8-minute or a 10-minute, I'll go a little bit larger. And anything bigger than that, I'll try to take up the whole page doing these drawings. And these are, let's see, 18 by 24. I think these are like 12 by 18 sheets. So 18 by 24, I cut in half. So yeah, this one, it's not a bad drawing. I'll photograph it, but again, there's little things in here that I see that are wrong, like the mouth being over too far to one side. This is one that I think the most interesting ones to study are the ones that are almost, sometimes it's good to study ones that are complete train wrecks, because then you're just kind of rebuilding it from the ground up and trying to just, rebuild the drawing, like trying to rebuild a ruined engine. But sometimes it's interesting when you're redrawing one that's, it's not a horrible drawing, but you can kind of see where there's things that aren't right. And it's kind of like learning how to knock a drawing back into shape is really important, because that's a skill you need to use all the time when you're doing drawing studies. This one I'll definitely use for the blog. I like the model's face on this one. So yeah, I don't know if I'm necessarily going to save this one to paint over. Again, if you haven't watched my videos before, I started taking some of my drawings from figure drawing class and painting over them in acrylic. And right now, I have so many other things I'm trying to get done. I'm working on my comic book Morningstar. I have some art prints I'm trying to finish. And I have a bunch of drawings already cut and ready to paint, that there's not much point in me saving any new drawings. Unless I find one that I really, really love, then I'll save it. But for the most part, this is one that if I didn't have anything on deck, I would probably save this one and do a painting on top of it. Like I said, the class I was taking was heads, hands, and feet. These are some shoe studies. I think it would go over well if I were at comic conventions and I were doing drawings. I wanted to sell them to people that had foot fetishes. This would be great, drawing some women's boots. That is not the case, so these are merely studies for my edification, which is really the main point of this. It's not like I'm doing these drawings to sell. It's more like I realized maybe I should start selling some of them because I'm doing these figure drawings all the time. These are ones that'll go on the blog. I think they're not bad for some shoe studies. It's not fashion illustration, but I do find them to be interesting studies. It's worth sharing on the blog. Let's see. Yeah, this one I was really starting to get into that sense of volume and structure on these. These must have been longer poses, because normally I'm not able to get this much detail in a shoe in like a 5-minute drawing. So I think these maybe were like 8-minute drawings. Either that or I was really feeling my oats that day. And part of this that's interesting in showing this whole variety of drawings is that I'll have some drawings that come out very well and very detailed, and then the very next drawing will just be an absolute train wreck. And I find it fascinating as the person who's making the art, how I can seem to have complete control over my skills and my faculties making art. And then 10 minutes later, it's all evaporated, or it's very much not as in control as it was. And I think that whole thing of trying to gain control over your art versus just letting things happen is one of the things that I'm struggling with. But it's a good struggle. It's not a bad thing to struggle with your art. Struggling with it as opposed to struggling against it. You don't want to struggle against your art. That's you and your art at cross purposes. Struggling with it means you and your art, you're wrestling, you're tussling, but you're going somewhere together. This one, I think I'm actually going to save this piece to do a paint over, because this is probably one of the better portraits I've drawn. Most of the drawings that I do when we do large drawings in my class, my figure drawing class, when I say my figure drawing class, I mean a class I'm attending. I'm not the instructor in this class. Very few of them really come out feeling like portraits. The point of the class is really to understand the structure of the head and understand the volumes that make up the face, the lighting, and how to accurately light and portray features. It's not necessarily about doing a portrait. But this one, I'm like, this feels like a real portrait. So yeah, I'll probably keep that one to paint over. It's probably the drawing I'm the most pleased with out of this entire bunch. So it's all downhill from here. If you want to check out now, now's the time. This one, I like her gesture and her kind of sullen expression, kind of the hair wringing. This is another one that I would redraw, because I like the attitude that she has. It's just so indistinct and so scratchy. Like my art is loose, but even amongst my loose art, this feels like scratchy. Like I didn't really define. I defined some of the features, but not others, leaving it a place where there's half places where it feels structural, and then half places where it's just sort of mushy and amorphous. So again, don't have time to go back and redraw a lot of these, but this is one that I would redraw if I had the time right now. Here's another one. I would redraw this one just purely because the skull is just wrong. Just it's malo. No, it's bad. There's a little unfinished figure sketch in here. Yeah, so for both of these, I don't think I'm even going to post this one on the blog. So, and I should mention, for a lot of the drawings in the blog, it used to be that I was not afraid to show bad drawings. In fact, I kind of wanted to show them because I wanted to give that sense that even somebody who is working as an artist and publishing comics and selling art prints and comic conventions, that when I talk to a lot of art students or younger artists, a lot of people are really disheartened by how much bad drawing they do. And it's almost like I want people to feel okay that you do bad work. I'm not encouraging bad work, and I'm not saying, oh, I don't care if my artwork is crap. It's almost like I want to share the struggle and the fact that I make a lot of bad drawings in the process of getting to the good ones. And that's okay. That's part of the process. We'd like to believe that as we go on in our careers, as we spend time as artists, we'll do fewer and fewer bad drawings and we'll have more and more successes. For some artists, that's true. There's some artists who they never do bad drawings. And then there's the other 99% of us. And most of us usually just hide those. And for me, it's more the fact that I just don't want people to feel shamed about doing bad drawings in service of getting to the good ones. The reason why I'm eliminating more of the bad drawings is just because I have so many drawings saved up to post on my blog. I probably got like a half a year's worth of these, that I'm just like, there's not much point in sharing a lot of the bad ones. I think it is, I'm starting to move to a point where I want to share the better drawings, the more interesting ones. Speaking of redrawing, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about right here. I'm glad this came up. This drawing on top is the drawing that I did in class, working from the model. Then the model went on a break. While we're on the break, usually I will sit there and I will try to figure out, this is what I'm talking about. I will go in and try to figure out what was wrong with the pose, what could have been better, what did I not get right. For instance, the fact that on here her leg is just straight, it's slightly bent, but I didn't really get what her posture was doing, which was her weight was resting on this leg, this hip was dipping down a little bit, and then her knee was on a chair. And I really didn't get that shift, and then the shift of her upper torso sort of swinging this way and her head coming back. None of that, there's a line in here kind of indicating her spine that's going that way, but you don't get that swing. You don't get any of that gesture style. You don't get the fact of the shirt actually going backwards behind her arms because her arms are folded behind her back. There's all these details. Like this one, it looks like her leg is coming kind of straight down. You don't get the sense of her leg going forward onto the chair, her knee going forward, and then the foot coming back out. The foreshortening on this one is atrocious. And the fact that her foot just feels more like a beer tab or something. It's just a little thing hanging off. It doesn't actually look like the bottom of a shoe. So these are all things that I went back in this drawing and fixed. And these are the kind of things that when I show you a bad drawing, like say this one up here, I'll go back and I'll do like maybe 2 or 3 different studies of a drawing that are like this, where I'm really trying to work out all the details. And this one just happened to come out well. A lot of times it'll be like, I'll do a drawing that's like this, that's bad. Then I'll do 2 more drawings that are also bad, but in different ways as I'm trying to explore it. And then maybe I'll get like a 3rd drawing that's a little bit more refined like this. And then finally I may end up with a drawing that I'm like, okay, the point wasn't that I'm trying to fix it and do a good version. The point is I'm trying to understand all of the things I did wrong here. And this is one of the things I harp about, is using your mistakes to learn from. It's not a crime to make mistakes. It's not a crime to make bad art. It's a crime to not learn from them. So, you know what? It's okay to do that. And I'm going to keep repeating myself. You're going to hear these things over again and again. I got to stop harping on this. And I also got to go through this because I have some color pieces to show you at the end. That'll be a pleasant surprise. And also, you know, that figure that I was drawing, the last one was a clothed figure as opposed to nudes. Now we've moved on to the class I'm actually taking now. Again, studying with Carl Ganas. I'm taking a costume in the draped figure. It's a 6-week class, 2 nights a week. So we study drapery and folds. And this is just me doing some simple studies. I think this was a drapery that was hanging on the wall behind the model there. Just some sketches of some different types of folds. Let's see. I like both of these drawings. This one, I am almost tempted to also save this one to paint. I don't know if I'm going to or not, but sometimes I get a drawing and I'm like, oh, yeah. It's always a pleasant surprise when I actually enjoy the way a drawing came out. Even without finishing her leg, I feel like I communicated what I wanted to. I got the pose, I got the folds, which were the point of the drawing class, you know, the exercise. Actually understanding how the fold would compress around the knee, you know, how the cloth will drape down the middle from her chest. It's a female model. Even she's wearing an overcoat. I mean, not an overcoat, like kind of a, I can't remember whether it was kind of a raincoatish or it was kind of a poncho-y thing, but not plastic, more like a cloth one. Something between a sweatshirt and a poncho. But getting the folds of the arms bunched up, you know, her hood. I really like the way this one came out. I might cut it out to paint it, but I'm definitely going to photograph these two for the blog. Let's see. Again, this was, I guess, a night where I was kind of feeling my oats. The only problem I have with this one is I feel like I didn't do a good job of separating this leg from that one, because the way it looks here, it almost looks like here's this leg and then there's part of it that's more here on the other side of this line. And really what it's supposed to be is, screw it, it's my drawing. I don't care if I draw on them. Really, this is the space between her back leg and her front leg, right in here. And I didn't feel like I defined that very well in this drawing. But other than that, I actually really like the foreshortening I got in here and the direction that everything is moving. The fact that she's got her body kind of posed and, you know, arching up with the arms above the head. You know, I like the kind of casual, defiant look of this piece, of this pose. Let's see. Nah, this one's not so great. Yeah, I didn't really, the folds are mushy. That's probably my biggest problem as an artist, is I go in and I try to draw things, and mushy for me is when instead of describing something, it's like fudging it. Where I sort of like, I kind of draw where that form's going, but it's not really there. It indicates I'm describing something, but I'm not really describing it. It's artistic visual mumbling. That is my biggest, I'm an artistic mush mouth. That's my biggest crime. I do it all the time. And these classes help me call myself on it. You gotta call yourself on your bullshit. If you don't, someone else will. Let's see. To blog or not to blog? The ones that I feel ambivalent about are also ones that I would usually definitely redraw. I don't think I'll post these on the blog. If you see them show up later, then I'm a liar. I may decide to photograph them, but whenever I'm ambivalent, I'm trying to just tell myself, ambivalent means no. Okay, I think this is the last one from that night with that model. I do actually like this one. And this is, interestingly enough, while it's not a great drawing, the attitude that the model has and the pose would make a great piece to paint on. Sometimes it's not necessarily about the drawing. Most of the times I do it, that I'm taking figure drawing classes, I'm trying to improve my craft. It should always be about the drawing. But sometimes you capture a feel and a mood, and this is one that I think would make a nice painting. Have not decided. I'm gonna make up my mind on the fly after I photograph it, whether I'm gonna cut it out, to paint or not. Because like I said, too many damn drawings already on deck that I haven't started painting yet. This is a drapery study. Like I said, I'm taking costume and the draped figure, and one of the exercises that Carl has us do is drawing a draped fabric at home and from one light source and then changing the light source to kind of see how it changes the volume and the direction of them. And so this one was my study. Something like this, worth photographing to show in my blog, but it doesn't really say anything about the work that I usually do. So, definitely not something I'm going to save to paint over. Who wants a painting of a, drapery hanging on a wall? Oh, these were notes that I made to myself after doing that drapery exercise, because there was one fold that just did not look right, that I couldn't get. And so, like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and even these, I still don't feel like I completely got it. And they still feel too labored, and they didn't capture what I was going for. But yeah, there's just one little fold that wrapped around. Well, let me grab the drawing again. In these drawings, this piece, it's as a t-shirt that I pinned to my wall above my drawing board, and I had turned on my lamps on one side and drew, then lamps from the other side and drew. And the hem of this shirt, the bottom of it kind of came around. We're looking at kind of the inside, like the inside of the shirt here. Then it turns. Now we're seeing the outside of the hem. And then it goes, and then it turned down, and they were looking at the inside again, but now we're seeing it being hit by light, and then it goes up, and then it turns away, but never completely away. That was one of the things I had trouble with, was the fact that it seemed to be turning kind of completely away from the light, like it would make a flat line, but instead it turned a little bit and then turned back out again. And I just could not get the subtleties of this form. It was really just drawing like a ribbon that's twisting. And it didn't look in either of these versions the way it looked visually, looking at it in front of me, and neither did any of these studies. So I still don't have it yet. But what it made me realize is that's something that I need to look out for. I need to set up more things in the future where I maybe set a cloth again, where I've got a piece of ribbon that's twisting and turning, and draw that and study it until I can convey it. Because one of the challenges I had was that I really labored over this area and redrew it several times and erased and redrew and erased and redrew. And you want to make things look like it's described, but you also don't want it to look labored. Like, that's another thing in here. Some of these parts are labored. They have detail and focus, so I'm not fudging it. But it looks like I was trying so hard to describe those things. Instead of like the whole piece feeling kind of casual. I mean, it is nice to have one particular area of the drawing that's kind of sharp and in focus. And usually I'll make it in the center, or I'll make it on what the most interesting part is. But I think that it's finding a nice balance, and I didn't really get that in this piece. I didn't get it in all of my studies. So again, these are the things that I do with my figure drawings. I rework stuff. All right. I got to keep it moving because I've also got to get to the color pieces. So again, these are some studies. I think this was the first night of the class, and the foreshortening on this leg was atrocious. So no, I won't be putting this on the blog. But when I do stuff like that, my first thing is, well, what did I do wrong? So then I started sitting here and trying to do sort of a squarish blocking of the way that the knee was. Then just trying to say, all right, well, here's a sphere. trying to do different versions of cylinders that are projecting out and, towards you and away from you. And the idea of having a cylinder that's coming towards you but narrowing, or a cylinder that's, coming towards you but the expanded part is closer, and trying to deal with those different ideas. Because like in a thigh, on one hand, as a cylinder is coming at you, you would think it's getting larger, but our thighs are wider than our legs are at the knees, and thicker. So I was trying to kind of play with those ideas and trying to, on a simple volumetric level, learn how to communicate that and understand why I'm not drawing it well. If you don't try to understand those things, you're just going to keep making the same mistakes over and over again. This one, I like this drawing. I think this one, I got a little bit more time than usual. I think this might have been a 8, maybe even a 10-minute pose. But this drawing, there was like the one other one I showed you that guy's head earlier that I felt like probably the best drawing I've done in the past few weeks in figure drawing class. This one feels like a complete drawing. It's still loose, like my natural style. There's like construction lines sticking out all over the place. If I really wanted to, I would clean up this line right here, get rid of that construction line that's sort of bounding the figure. But overall, it feels like a complete drawing. Just the right amount of detail, right amount of tone. It feels like a finished piece for me. As finished as a figure drawing study is. If I were going to really say, oh, it's a formal drawing, it would really just be a lot of cleanup in detail and adding extra thickness to lines that are facing away from the light. That's all. These are nice, definitely going on the blog. Not going to paint them. More of the same. These ones not as nice. A little bit looser. These are more just typical studies. I go in, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, try to get as much done as possible. They're not bad, but I don't think I'm going to photograph any of the ones from the blog from this page. This one I like. I'll photograph that for the blog. And I think I'll photograph this one for the blog too, because even though it's so unfinished, I do like how I describe this form, both leaning back and twisting away from me. So these are the kind of things that I find interesting, is just when I'm able to actually describe something. You'd think that I'm always doing that when I'm drawing, but a lot of the times, like I said, I fudge and I mumble. So when I'm doing something that's hard, and doing forms, torsos in foreshortening are hard for me, because hands foreshortening, arms foreshortening, you get that thing where you can see the limbs and the fingers and joints doing all these interesting things and overlap. Doing that with the torso, there's definitely forms to work with that help describe it, but I find it very challenging. These fast, rough drawings, don't think any of these came out well. Not saving any of those for the blog. I just realized the whole time I'm doing this, I'm not separating them into 2 different piles the way I should, so I don't have to come back to it later. I think maybe I'd photograph this one for the blog. I don't think I'll keep any of the other ones. Like even this drawing right here, again, a drawing that felt incomplete, indistinct. There was a lot going on with his shoulder. I went back in and was redrawing it, and even then I still didn't get into the shoulder. Yeah, there was he had great dynamics, this model, in his torso and how much energy he had, and I didn't capture a lot of it, and those are the kind of things that I'll go back and I'll just redraw and redraw and redraw until I can draw something that has the energy that I saw there, remember there, or imagine there. Nothing wrong with injecting a little imaginary energy into your drawings. Okay, and this one, not bad, but it's just nothing special here. Maybe I'll do this one just because the point of it, again, with the draped figures, capturing what the clothing is doing, and I like the stretch it's coming out of the clothing there, and the way the clothing is folding around the knees again and down around the feet. So maybe I'll photograph those for the blog, but definitely not saving them to paint. Now I have to keep an eye out for my cats, because one of them, Khaleesi, just crawled into the room and is now sniffing around the drawings, and she likes to chew on drawings, and she likes to walk on figure drawings. And I really don't want that, because I don't want her to sit on the drawings and crease them. Let's see. And the proportions are horrible on this one. It's not bad as a sketch, but this is practically just like a doodle. This would be like a rough thumbnail for like one of my comic pages. So maybe I'll do that one. The rest of this page isn't really doing much for me. So the color work. All right, so the class that I've been taking on Thursday nights, it's models in costumes. So it's not just studying, street clothes, pants, jeans, jackets. It's more elaborate, costume drawing. And we're encouraged to experiment with different mediums. And it used to be that I would do a bunch of stuff. I would do ink drawings. And as I've shown in the past, I've been enjoying doing watercolor thumbnails for formal pieces lately. So I thought, why don't I try doing watercolor pieces in figure drawing class? There's not enough time, and I don't have enough control. And there's too many variables. I was trying to intentionally mix it up and do a different color combination in terms of the palette each time. And again, I'm not saying that these are the worst drawings in the world, but a lot of them, I didn't get into, they're so out of proportion because I'm doing the structural underdrawings I would normally do for a figure drawing. I don't have as much control over the watercolor, and I'm spending time fighting to get the material to do what I want, that I can't really sit there and actually describe anything, which is kind of the point, to actually describe stuff. It's a lot looser than I intended. Let's see, I think I've just got... Yeah, that's it. It's the only ones I have from this book. Oh, the reason why is because I realized after the first night of class, I needed to bring two different drawing pads or art books to work from, because I needed to, instead of just flipping one page over and moving to the next one, when I was done filling up a sheet with drawings and models, I needed to sit this aside to dry, and I needed a second sketchbook or art book to draw on, to paint into while this was drying, enough that I could turn the page. Now on these, I started getting a little bit more of the gesture drawings that I would go for, and being able to indicate in color some of the details. And there's something about this one that's actually kind of nice and pretty. I like the kind of looseness there. But again, it's a far cry from the amount of control that I would have if I were I would want if I were doing a controlled study drawing of a figure. And I think these again were 8-minute poses, but a lot of them were just barely indicating the structure of the figure at all, not getting much detail in it. And this one, there's just, other than what's going on in the pants, there's just not enough there, not enough going on. Same here, blocking in the figure and then going in and trying to start rendering these details, working wet on wet. I didn't get there. And what was funny is a couple of weeks into doing the class, I turned to instructor Carl and I said, I think I'm going to give up on doing the watercolor drawings on the Thursday nights and go back to doing ink. And he's just sort of came to that conclusion all by yourself, huh? So it's funny because I knew they were horrible. He knew they were horrible. But I've been studying long enough that he was like, you know what? If this kid wants to throw away a whole semester of drawings on some weird watercolor experiment, let him go. I mean, I still don't know whether I wish he had just tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey man, that's just not working. Or whether to be grateful that he would just let me go and find my own way. But he seemed amused that I came to the conclusion that it was not working. But I will show you when I'm done. By the way, this drawing was me trying to redraw. This drawing, I think this was like the first night that I was trying the watercolors, and this was this big wet amorphous blob. And then this was more of closer to what I was trying to draw. And I think in about 10 minutes, if I really have my A game on, I can do a 10-minute pose. Plus, also notice how much smaller this is. It's small and concise. I was able to get in there and put in just what I needed. With most of the drawings, I was drawing bigger, but bigger also meant wetter, and wetter meant not as much control. So, I mean, there's a couple of drawings, again, that aren't bad. Maybe I'll photograph this one. But then you also see something like this where there's indications that it's a human form, but that's not really much of a painting or drawing. Let's see. And again, a little bit more where if it wasn't so wet on wet, I might have been able to carve more out of there. And part of this, remember, I wanted to experiment because I don't have mastery over watercolor. And I thought, you know, that class would be a great time to experiment with something I haven't mastered. There's probably plenty of watercolor artists who could sit there and in 10 minutes do a very detailed, controlled, while still letting the happy accents that watercolor is known for, but do very controlled drawings, paintings, studies in ink. I mean, in watercolor in like 10 minutes. I just don't have that control yet. So for now, I think the watercolors are going to stick to me doing thumbnails for color pieces and not doing them in like a timed speed scenario. Or me just doodling for fun with them, which, hey, never forget to have fun with your art. Now, for a night and day difference, this was when I switched back to what I usually do, which is I'll do a very light umber pencil underdrawing just to get the proportions and maybe the twist of the figure, and then I'll go in with a brush pen and draw in, you know, ink drawing instead. And again, these are like 8-minute drawings. So immediately for me, I'm doing this and I can feel the comfort that I have from doing the comic book work that I do, how much control I have. I've got way more control with this material than I did with the watercolor. And again, I'm not saying these are the world's best ink drawings. I'm saying that in a figure drawing scenario, working with a wet medium, I'm just better with it than I am with the watercolor. I can actually get the whole figure down. Although in this case, I spent so much time trying to work on the shininess of the material, and really, it's silly in a figure drawing class I'm wasting time doing hatching on fish nets, but I wanted to sit there and try and address all of the material. So, you know, getting her belt, which had these shiny bullets on it, the stretching of this vinyl top, the fishnets. I really didn't do the boots justice, which were kind of furry boots. So at that point, I've said, let me just focus on the clothing, and I just never got to the arms. She had a little knife prop with her, and her hair and all that. You know, again here, this is a bit more of me fudging it. I was trying to go for the way that light kind of refracts around vinyl, like kind of the angular bends that vinyl has in it, where they're folds, but they're like sharp folds. It almost feels faceted in the way that it bends. But it was a little bit loosey-gooseier and not as well observed as I would have liked. So again, I think both of these are drawings that I'll share on the blog. You know, I'm such a shill for it. I love the ink drawing because that's, you know, working with a brush. That's what I do in my comic stuff. So for me, it just seems natural to do that stuff and have more control and to enjoy, you know, sharing it more. On this one, as you can see, I was drawing it in ink, and I want to just put a line in here afterwards because this particular model, she's very tall, but I just made her feet way too long. And it's a shame because it did actually kind of work in terms of the angle and how I rendered the fuzziness and the furriness of her boots. But I just was looking and I'm like, that's way too tall, and her knee should be up a little bit higher. And just the proportions were bad. Like that knee would be in the right place if this foot went all the way down here, but that foot is just way too tall. This leg, especially because it's not going straight down, but it's going to the side, that this leg, if you were to drop it down here, put it like that, like just way out of proportion. So I just put a line there, and that's me calling myself. I'm like, you fucked up. You can't, you gotta, you don't have to ruin this drawing, but I was like, I gotta put a line across there and say, hey, that's where you should have been. And then I think these were faster poses. Like maybe they were 5, maybe they were shorter, but I really had to start going to just working in line. It was tough trying to get everything down because, we're working in costume and trying to get all these details down. And a lot of times I will spend, if it's a 5-minute pose, I will spend 3 of those minutes just trying to get the action of the model down. So it's like I don't even get to the actual clothing drawing. I'm just worried about getting the figure. And for me, that isn't necessarily the point of the class, but I feel like if I don't get the gesture down, then I don't get the drawing. Anything I put on top of it doesn't work. And I can put myself in the mindset of saying, all right, I'm just going to draw clothing on top of a badly constructed figure. I can do that, but I feel like it's more often than not what I'm going to go for is learning how to try and fix the figure and get that down quicker so that I'm never doing it over a bad figure. This is one that I wish I had more time for because I really like the foreshortening of the model's leg here. I was pretty happy with this pose. This one, not so much. I mean, it was a great pose. The model, we generally have great models. Her pose was great. My rendition of said pose, not so great. All right, just a couple more here and I'll wrap it up. This one's super long. I really did not think I was going to be running that long. I don't think either one of these are particularly great. Don't think I'm going to share those, except sharing them with you right now in the video. But yeah, I'm not going to photograph them for the blog. Let's see. Same model, the tall one, changed into sort of a Carmen Miranda costume, which is really nice, cute, bananas on the top. Again, this is one of those where the challenge is in the time of the pose, drawing the fruit and indicating it. Because that's another thing. I've never really sat down and done formal still lifes of fruit. Maybe I should do that just for the exercise of it. Because when I sat there to draw a bunch of fruit on top of this woman's head, nothing. So I was more concerned with getting the pose, the way the swivel of the hips, the contrapposto, which I am realizing I really need to work on more in general. So working on those kind of details, when it got to doing the clothing, the costume details, I muffed it hardcore. This one, again, very, very unfinished, but I was pleased with getting the ins and outs in ink of the drapery around her legs, how it was gathered, and how the cloth would change direction as it went up her thighs and then gathering up around her waist. So yeah, I'll be photographing this one for the blog. Couple more. Now this was interesting because we're back to fast poses. So I remember now that there was conversation about us going between fast poses and slow poses as opposed to just building up from, sometimes some classes have warm-ups and then they get longer and longer. Some classes do the opposite where they start with longer poses and get shorter and shorter. This is one where we're intentionally going back and forth, which I found challenging, but in a good way. It kept me on my toes, kept me focusing and thinking. This was one that made me really think about the power of the line. Because I generally don't work in an open line style. I rely on shadows a lot in my comic book work. Perhaps some would say too much. And yeah, in this one, I felt like even though I didn't get a complete drawing, there's details. I didn't get the lower part of her leg, her back leg, or the arms. I didn't get any of the headdress that was on the costume. But I felt like I got the energy of the pose and what her body was doing and the nature of the drapery on there in this very rough drawing. And I thought, I need to spend more time working just with line. I'm working most of the time with line and shadow to create volume and structure, but it is good to change the way you think about your drawings, about how you're portraying the object, and seeing what I can portray just in line, how well I can portray volume in just line. Because I think it'll make me better at portraying it when I'm using other tools. It's like, learning how to draw really well with a pencil, because then if you go into watercolor, acrylic, oils, digital, whatever you take into other mediums, your fundamentals, your drawing fundamentals are everything. And I think that even cutting a drawing down from tone to just line and learning what you can do with that very basic tool, it's very useful. I like the swish of this. Again, a pretty incomplete drawing, but I think I'll photograph this one for the blog. And that's it. That is it. Thank you for joining me, running through all the drawings that I've done over the past month, and I'll do another drawing purge in February.
That's it for now. You can check out my website, jeremy.net. That's GERIMI.net. That's where you can buy my comic books and artwork. You can also sign up for my free weekly newsletter to get a behind-the-scenes look at my creative process, updates on new comic books and artwork releases, and upcoming comic book convention appearances. Okay, go be creative.